welcome to the 2024 Caraway Rug School Rug Show. We're happy that you can join us virtually, and I'm going to take you around for a show that will delight your eyes. Here is a tufted rug done by Amanda Gadpole, Witch's Dance. And here is Feed My Sheep, and that's done by Sylvia Nobles. And here's a beautiful pattern, and it's called Sears Port, done by Mary Biggs. And you can see Winter Greetings done by Karen Whidden, and Halloween ETA 5 Minutes done by Ruth Poole. This is Forget Me Not, done by Shirley Dillard. View from the Beach, done by Mary Lee. A Maud Lewis Cow and Car, beautifully done by Christine Doobie. Here is Horse Love, and that is a Bev Conway pattern done by Mary Biggs. This has a very cute saying around it. We'll try and show this like that. Oh Noah, hooked by Missy McKim. Here is Derby Day. Derby Day, hooked by Wendy Waltman. Here is God's Shed His Grace on Thee, hooked by Jan King. Eastland. Eastland is an old Pearl McGowan pattern that we featured in other videos. This one is hooked by Wendy Waltman and is beautifully done. This is Art Nouveau by Sybil Secca. Phenomenal. Look at that feather. Four Pineapples. Lovely purple background, hooked by Janet Sanborn. Here's a great take on an old pattern. This is Hudson Star, and it's hooked by Wendy Waltman. Prudence, hooked by Lisanne Miller. Peace in the Garden, hooked by Jan King. This is Liberty or Death. Look at the folds, look at the dimension, hooked by one of our teachers, Ellen Banker. Kangaroos, hooked by John Leonard. The Tree Skirt, Simple Bounty, hooked by Karen Whidden, one of our teachers. Simple Bounty Tree Skirt, hooked by Lisanne Miller. This is a farm scene done by Google Maps, hooked by Barb Ackerman. Rufus, hooked by Mary Biggs. And we're just going to take a walk over. You're going to walk over with me. And here is Sandhill Crane, hooked by Babs Williams. This'll Fink up top, hooked by Shirley Dillard. What Green Eyes You Have, hooked by Patty Wilson. Hoping They Fill the Bird Feeders, hooked by Brenda Reed. Sharon Smith's Snowman, hooked by Jenny Adcock. Snow Time, hooked by Sybil. Mrs. Rabbit, hooked by Karen Whidden, one of our teachers. Thanksgiving Greetings, hooked by Ruth Poole. The Spring Dance, hooked by Karen Whidden. Barn Owl, hooked by Kathy Wheeler. Bittersweet Pumpkin, hooked by Janice Alt. Across the Lake, this is a Galchoot pattern hooked by Joanne Gledhill. This is an early Galchoot pattern that she got in our auction last year. Great job, Joanne. Unicorn Tapestry. So nice, nice purple background, hooked by Kathy Coart. Farm and Forest, personalized with flying pigs, bumblebees, and butterflies with an adorable nest, hooked by Joan Ray. Christmas Eve, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Always Plan for Company, hooked by Lynn Wilder. Honey Bunny. Honey Bunny is hooked by Shirley Dillard. Candy Canes, hooked by Linda Klein. This is called Huh? And it may look familiar because it's the cover on Ellen's book, hooked by Ellen Banker. All right. Let us be silent so that we can hear the whisper of God, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. And Mrs. Bunny. Mrs. Bunny can hang on a door, or I believe it can sit in a chair, hooked by Marcia Hockaday. Here's a 3-Dog Day, hooked by Shirley Dillard. Love at First Sight, hooked by Sibylla Secca, one of our teachers. Manatee, hooked by Nancy Schaefer. Four Tales of Halloween, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Okay. Claire's Hen Party, hooked by Joan Ray. First Winter Snow, hooked by Jane Dunaway. Sir Rabbit, hooked by Patty Wilson. Happy Hooking, hooked by Nancy Schaefer. Memorial Day, hooked by Karen Whidden. The Chillin' Gnome, hooked by Nancy Schaefer. Window Shopper, hooked by Teresa Heinze. Window Shopper, hooked by Betsy Sarver. Two Old Beavers, hooked by Margaret Mahler. Sahina, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Stained Glass Bench Mat, hooked by Donna Bradish. Four Petal, hooked by one of our teachers, Maureen Ruger. Respect Science, hooked by Barb Ackerman. Comforts of Home, hooked by Claudia Lampley. A beautiful, simple Oriental, hooked by Mary Biggs. Prudence, hooked by Vicki Robertson. Baby's Blocks, hooked by Delane Miller. Wandering Wonder, hooked by Jan King. Small Frost Oriental, hooked by one of our teachers, Maureen Ruger. Squares, a new take on hit or miss as well as log cabin. Very modern take, excellent job, hooked by Wendy Waltman. Gingerbread Fun, hooked by Jolene Ruger. Parcheesi Board, hooked by Jolene Ruger. Checkers, anyone? Hooked by Jolene Ruger. Here is Calico, hooked by Michelle Emanuel. Easter Bunny Postcard, hooked by Joan Ray. Dancing Prisms, and boy they are dancing, hooked by Pam Manders. Rick Rack, hooked by Linda Klein. Night Out, hooked by Joan Ray. Thanksgiving Greetings, hooked by Karen Whidden. Primitive Patriotic Floral, hooked by Linda Klein. Cotan, hooked by Brenda Reed. COVID 2020, hooked by Sarah Beth Black. Cat's Paw Floral Geometric, hooked by Barb Ackerman. Easy Scroll, hooked by Ruth Poole. Burnham Medallion, hooked by Ruth Poole. Little Winchester, hooked by Mary Biggs. Arundel Cruel, hooked by Barbara Dexter. Tropical Flowers, hooked by Kay Stefanik. Give Me Jesus by Shirley Dillard. Flower Box by Nancy Schaefer. Caraway Flowers, hooked by Mary Lee O'Connor. Chin Up, hooked by Julia Bush. Antique Roses, hooked by Missy McKim. Amical, hooked by Christine Doobie. The Happy Family, hooked by Michelle Emanuel. Rick Rack, hooked by Jan King. Blueberry Bunny Cottage, hooked by Brenda Reed. It Is What It Is, or Is It, by Mary Lee O'Connor. Cat's Paws by Mary Lee O'Connor. The Quaker by Julie Riley. Ready for the Costume Ball, hooked by Karen Whidden. Daisies, the Sharon Smith pattern, hooked by Dana Norquist. Poppy Pods, hooked by Betsy Sarver. Marguerite, hooked by Elizabeth Morgan. Bountiful Bowl, hooked by Bonnie Molinari. Hearts to You, hooked by Pam Landry. Yum Yum, hooked by Marcia Hockaday. Flower Runner, Kay Stefanik. Brenda's Garden, hooked by Marcia Hockaday. Or Bonnie's Garden, not sure with the handwriting. Queen Anne Oval, hooked by Barbara Dexter. Stonehouse Runner, hooked by Kathy Cowart. William Morris Floral, Linda Klein. Jubilee, hooked by Julie Riley. Ilsa, however you'd like to pronounce it, hooked by Patty Wilson. Rose Malling, hooked by Barbara Dexter. We're getting there, people. We're not there yet, though. All right. Large Frost Oriental, hooked by Nancy Parcells. Cape May, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. This is Arts and Crafts 4 Squared, hooked by Vicki Robertson. Clams by Nancy Parcell. Dressmaker's Garden, hooked by Janice Alt. Ukraine's Glory, hooked by Barb Ackerman. Heartland Sampler, hooked by Betsy Sarver. Hillside Garden, hooked by Jeannie Benjamin. Claretta, hooked by Jeannie Benjamin. 4 Pineapples, hooked by Becky Vickery. Tree of Life by Pam Manders. Nightingale by Marcia Hockaday. Mr. McGregor's Garden, hooked by Jolene Ruger. Kent Basket, hooked by Maureen Ruger, one of our teachers. Vase with Poppies and Daisies, hooked by Karen Whitten, one of our teachers. Here we have a Tree of Clint, hooked by Megan McEwen. Posies by Bonnie Molinari. Seed Basket, hooked by Christine Doobie. Fractor by Shirley Dillard. Ask for Directions, Betsy Sarver. Floral Sampler, hooked by Ruth Poole. Old Flower Basket, hooked by Maureen Ruger. One White Pumpkin, hooked by Nancy Parcells. Small Guilford Runner, hooked by Nancy Parcells. Celtic Pumpkin, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Okay. Summer Laundry, hooked by Teresa Heinze. Fire Dreams, hooked by Megan McEwen. Things I Found at the Beach, hooked by Teresa Heinze. This is the Day, hooked by Janet Sanborn. There we are here. Not sure it's hooked by Linda Klein. It's an adapted pattern. All right. Fairfield Huntsman, hooked by Janet Sanborn. Unknown, hooked by Mary Biggs. Colliding Circular Rainbows, hooked by John Leonard. Crystal Flakes, hooked by Sarah Beth Black. Poppy Pillow, Vicki Robertson. Floral Purse, Patty Wilson. Prudence Pillow, Babs Williams. An M. Shaw Bird by Linda Klein. Finnegan's Farm, hooked by Susie Phipps. Blueberry Chair Pad, hooked by Bonnie Molinari. Tomatoes or Tomatoes Chair Pad, hooked by Bonnie Molinari. Rose Wreath, hooked by Bonnie Molinari. Fruit Chair Seat, hooked by Bonnie Molinari. Pinewood Chair Seat, hooked by Bonnie Molinari. Daffodils Chair Seat, hooked by Bonnie Molinari. Variety of Leaves, hooked by Karen Preston. Tabriz in Circular, hooked by Karen Preston. Variety of Leaves, hooked by Karen Preston. Magdalena Rooster, hooked by Sylvia Nobles. Butterfly, with Pearlix Pigments, John Leonard. Somalia Gold, hooked by Lisanne Miller. Helga and Boo by Janice Alt. Eskimo Eagle by Donna Bradish. Monarch Magic, hooked by Betsy Sarver. Porter Sheep by Christine Doobie. Chicken and the Egg, Which Came First by Jolene Ruger. Winter in the Country Table Runner, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Bluebird Stocking, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Bluebird Stocking, hooked by Lisanne Miller. Winter Woodland, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Ho 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 Santa, hooked by Sibyl. Chickadee Stocking, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Chickadee Stocking, hooked by Lisanne Miller. Cardinal Stocking, hooked by Serena Wakeland Starr. Sophie, hooked by Brenda Reed. Deco Winter Village, hooked by Barbara Dexter. Virginia, hooked by Ruth Poole. Payne's Prairie, hooked by Lisanne Miller. Celtic Pumpkin, hooked by Nancy Schaefer. School's Out, hooked by Nancy Schaefer. Thanksgiving Table Runner, hooked by Kathy Williams. Falling Leaf, hooked by Deb Lynch. Redbird, hooked by Jolene Ruger. Deco Easter Bunny, hooked by Vicki Robertson. Saint Nick, hooked by Claudia Lampley. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed the rug show. We're sorry you couldn't be here in person, but enjoy and have a great day.